It was a tense moment at the breakfast table in room B52 on the first-class deck on the Titanic. Carl, the heir to a Pittsburgh steel fortune, is ever growing suspicious of his fiancée, Rose, and her affections for a third-class passenger called Jack. In a moment of rage and impulse, Carl violently turns over the breakfast table, leaving Rose scared and devastated, creating a chilling moment from an iconic movie.
So you will honor me. You will honor me the way a wife is required to honor a husband.
Just recently, I met Billy Zane at a greet and meet at a theatre here in Melbourne called the Astor Theatre. During a Q&A, someone asked him about that table-turning scene. Zane explained that it wasn't in the script, they kind of made it up on the spot, and I believe he said it took about 6 takes of him flipping over the table, and it was actually kind of tricky, because his co-star Kate Winslet was wearing an extravagant dress, so he kind of had to make sure that he didn't get any of the breakfast on her. So yeah, if it wasn't for movie set impulses, that scene which shows just how ruthless and sinister the Cal character is may have been different. But this got me thinking about the other changes and deleted scenes that occurred during the making of the movie Titanic. Like the movie's alternative, unused ending, where Bill Paxton's Brock Lovett's character was trying to plead with elderly Rose, played by Gloria Stewart, to not drop the heart of the ocean into the Atlantic. And in addition to that, imagine if the movie had a different cast. Yeah, no Kate and Leo, but rather Kate and this guy. So today we're going to explore the lost version of the movie Titanic, featuring scenes which to many, like the Titanic itself, has been lost at sea. So it's time to return to the unsinkable ship, which sadly proved to be very sinkable, as we explore Titanic as you've never seen it before.
I'm the king of the world!
It was the early 90s, and movie-making wizard James Cameron is trying to put the pieces together for his epic movie about the tragic doomed maiden voyage of the Titanic. His number one choice for the character Jack Dawson is River Phoenix. However, Phoenix sadly passed away in 1993. As the 90s became the late 90s, the search was on for Cameron to find his Jack Dawson. Tom Cruise expressed interest, but his fee was too high. Other potential big names at that time were thrown around, like Chris O'Donnell, Stephen Dorff, Johnny Depp, Jared Leto, and Billy Crudup. Matthew McConaughey did an audition with Kate Winslet, and he actually felt that he did a good job and was secure in landing the role. Ultimately, he did not. Equally, several big actresses at that time were also considered to play Rose, including Winona Ryder, Claire Danes, and Gwyneth Paltrow. Kate Winslet consistently campaigned for the part, and did several auditions. However, Cameron still wasn't sure. Winslet even sent Cameron a postcard saying, quote, "You don't understand, I am Rose." So he gave in, and the British actress landed the part. So to fill in the old third-class boots of Jack, an actor called Jeremy Sisto auditioned. His audition tapes have been made available, and it gives us an insight into an alternative Titanic, or rather, Titanic the way it could have been.
Would you really have jumped after me?
I don't know.
An honest answer.
Well, I might have.
And what's also fascinating is Kate Winslet's hair isn't red like how we see in the film, but rather strawberry blonde. Now this audition itself is equally fascinating. In my opinion, there's just something off. Their chemistry just doesn't feel right. Now I don't think either one of these actors are wooden, not by any means, but their chemistry together is wooden. And there's just a sort of awkwardness about it. Although it may have been pretty difficult performing that scene, given how creaky that couch is that they're sitting on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for thanking me.
Seriously, listen to that thing.
I wanted to thank you.
It sounds like me after eating spicy food. The dialogue is really weird too, where Jack tells Rose that the rose flower is the only flower that can draw blood.
And, it's the only flower that can draw blood.
Hello? What's with the awkward pause?
What's this?
Okay, it's not just me, is it? This really is awkward, yeah? Now, when Leonardo DiCaprio came on the scene, he originally was not interested in the part. Nope. He didn't even want to audition, but Cameron did convince him to do a screen test, and it was clear from the offset that he had amazing chemistry with Winslet.
Curiosity. Do you have a name?
Rose.
Rose.
Rose DeWitt Bicator.
I may have to get you to write that down.
I'm Jack Dawson.
Rose DeWitt Bicator.
I have to get you to write that one down.
So he was cast, and for the better. To give Jeremy Sisto his fair dues, he did have a somewhat rougher, scruffier look, which in my opinion did seem more in alignment with a third-class passenger of 1912. There's something kind of old and timey looking about him, unlike Leo, who basically had perfectly groomed 90s boy band hair. I do also feel like Sisto's Jack was a little rough around the edges too. There was a no-nonsense in his demeanour, giving a glimpse into a very different Jack Dawson.
Teach them not to listen, they'll sure be sorry.
Yeah, they'll be sorry and you'll be dead.
Look, maybe Sisto was having a bad day, but in my opinion, he also comes across as really low energy and really, honestly, he looks bored. However, as the pages of history have proven, when it came to casting, things did work out for the best. But what of the scenes that didn't make it into the movie? Well, given that Titanic is a 3-hour-long film, there's naturally a lot of deleted scenes. Here are a few that stood out to me. This scene takes place just before Rose attempts to leap off the Titanic, where in a moment of despair, she's trying to remove all her luxurious garments as they represent the chains that are keeping her trapped, where she then frantically trashes her belongings. And this moment of trying to remove all these upper-class garments as not to feel trapped explains why she wanted Jack to draw her like one of his French girls, you know, in the nude. So she's free and no longer constrained to the upper-class expectations and restraints. Brock is frantically trying to find a way to figure out where the Heart of the Ocean necklace is and how he can get the information out of old Rose. There's an urgency as his investors for the expedition are about to pull out. Rose's granddaughter Lizzie tells Brock to back off and not to push her grandmother too hard. And it's here that Brock and Lizzie feel that Rose may be there for a different reason other than the Heart of the Ocean, but instead to make peace with the past, a notion which actually calms Brock's frantic episode. There's a scene where Rose visits the third-class part of the ship, and it's interesting seeing more of this location, as we don't see it much in the theatrical movie, apart from when that part of the ship has its late-night party. But here you can see all the finer details of life in third class on Titanic. However, when Rose walks in, everyone goes silent and just stares at her. Yeah, look, I find this a little corny. Seriously, all these people are acting like they've witnessed a miracle, or like they're witnessing a new species of human. It feels more Hollywood than historical, in my opinion. I don't know, unless third-class passengers really did gush over the sights of first-class passengers? I don't know, I wasn't there. When Jack and Rose take their leisurely stroll around the Titanic, Rose speaks of all her dreams and ambitions she has, including being a motion picture star, indicating that she has many goals and ambitions beyond her current predicament that she's currently stuck in. There's a scene where after Rose parties with the third-class deck, her and Jack are looking up upon the stars, where it's made explicitly clear in this scene that Rose really wants to be with Jack. No ambiguity, no misunderstandings, she wants to be with him but she feels like she can't.
What would you wish for?
Something I can't have.
This would have set up straight away that they have a strong romantic connection, rather than it sort of building up as the movie went on. We also get a tour of the gymnasium, which I really appreciate, as the real Titanic did have a gymnasium, so it's nice to see another part of the ship that we don't really get to see in the movie. There's also a scene where things get really hot and steamy between Jack and Rose in the boiler room, before retreating to the sex car. Damn, get a room, you two! Or a 1912 Renault Type CB Coupe de Ville. Now this is a really interesting cutscene, where we see Titanic's wireless operators communicating with fellow ship, the Californian, which was an actual ship of that era. However, the Titanic operators think that the Californian operators are just being annoying, so they just shrug them off. We then actually cut to the Californian, where we see they are trying to warn Titanic about all the ice on the ocean. The officers on the Californian can see all the icebergs on the water and knew that they were hazardous. But sadly, their pleas to help the Titanic fell on deaf ears. And yes, apparently this really happened. The Californian did try to warn Titanic of icebergs. The funny thing is, the movie depicts J. Bruce Ismay as the villain of Titanic's demise. But if this scene is really what happened in real life, surely there's some level of responsibility here. I mean, come on, what a bunch of silly billies. I love this shot of Molly Brown asking for ice in her drink while the Titanic literally passes an iceberg behind her.
Hey, Sonny, how about a little ice?
Yes, ma'am, I'll bring it.
Yes, once again it's corny, and I feel like it's meant to be kind of a gag, and possibly at a time where we're not meant to be laughing, but I still think it's a cool visual. Speaking of Ismay, there's a scene where, when the chaos starts, we see him go into a panic. I guess the irony is he's created this mess, and now he's acting like a coward. Incidentally, like the movie, the real Ismay did survive the Titanic, and was often depicted in newspaper cartoons as a ghoul who stole a woman's or child's spot on a lifeboat, and lacked the courage and decency to go down with the ship. As after his survival, the press and general public went after him hard. His life after Titanic was destroyed by a society who rejected him, and forever looked upon him with shame as a sneak and a coward. Ismay would live the rest of his life in isolation, and the shame and rejection put upon him by society would even transpire to his heirs. There's a scene where we see an elderly couple called Ida and Isidore Strauss, where Isidore tries to persuade Ida to get on a lifeboat, but she refuses and stays with her husband. This is based on a real married couple who were on the Titanic, who sadly fell with the ship. And there are reports that Ida refused to part ways with her husband and stay with him in death. Incidentally, Isidore was the co-owner of Macy's department store, and the actress playing Ida was the Save the Clock Tower lady from Back to the Future, Elsa Raven. And in several of the deleted scenes, there is more of an emphasis put on the relationship between Jack's friend, Fabrizio, and a female third-class passenger called Helga, who we get a brief glimpse of in the theatrical film. When Jack and Rose are trying to find a way out of the bottom steerage, Fabrizio pleads with Helga to join him, Jack and Rose, to try and get out, but her parents won't allow it, where they then have to tragically part ways in a sad and moving scene. But I'm guessing this was cut because it was probably felt there was only enough room for one tragic love story in this movie. Molly Brown takes charge and helps to row the lifeboat because she's a badass. The captain of the Titanic calls the lifeboat back in order to take more passengers away. Now Molly Brown wants to go back in order to rescue more people, but the officer in charge isn't having any of it, fearing that they would be sucked under the ship. It's this encounter which then leads to the hostile tension in the theatrical film when the same guy tells her to shut the hole in her face. Yeah, he was really mean. But regardless, Molly Brown and this guy is still a better love story than Twilight. So after Cal tries to shoot Jack and Rose, he sends his security, Lovejoy, played by David Warner, out to finish the job, where we see the dining area is sinking. There's actually some pretty good filming here. This looks like a dangerous place that is heading to the bottom of the ocean, like get out. And it's actually quite a tense scene, as the dining area even starts to tip upwards. So you know that this is a dangerous environment and you would literally have minutes to get out there safely before permanently becoming part of the Atlantic Ocean. Jack and Rose are trying to hide from Lovejoy. Lovejoy finds Rose and is about to shoot her, but Jack jumps out and gets into a fight with Lovejoy and beats the shit out of him. Oh wow, I wish this scene stayed in, because Lovejoy was such a nasty character, so it's good seeing him get what he deserves. Jack even gives him a gut punch, just how Lovejoy had previously done with him when he abandoned Jack and left him there to drown while he was handcuffed. Jack and Rose then have to continue to get away, leaving Lovejoy behind. This entire sequence explains why, in the theatrical film, Lovejoy seemingly disappears and is no longer by Cal's side in the later stages when Cal is trying to get off the ship, where Lovejoy randomly shows up again when the Titanic splits in half. And on a side note, David Warner, who starred as Lovejoy, had actually previously starred in another Titanic movie, all the way back in 1979, nearly 20 years before the release of James Cameron's Titanic, in a movie called SOS Titanic. So he was kind of a Titanic movie starring veteran when you think about it. After the ship has sunk, another man approaches Jack and Rose and asks if he can also lay on the doorframe that Rose is laying on. Jack is like, "Oh no, not on my watch, there's no room."
It's just enough for this lady. We'll push it under.
Let me try at least, or I'll die soon.
You'll die sooner if you come any closer.
So the other man actually graciously leaves and wishes them well. I'm actually glad this wasn't in the movie, otherwise we'll have conspiracy theories of how there was enough room for Jack and this random bald guy. Later on, there's a scene where we see a rescue boat save a Chinese passenger who has managed to survive by clinging to a door. This once again is based on a real person called Fang Lang, who did indeed survive the Titanic by clinging onto a floating door, and he lived to the age of 91. The next morning, there's a scene on board the Carpathia ship, which indeed did bring in survivors, where we see the true level of human misery the Titanic has caused. And in case you hadn't realised the movie wants Ismay to be the villain, there's a scene where he's walking among the survivors, and they just look upon him with disgust and disdain. Look, I get it, narratively it's meant to be depicting that he's the villain, but how on earth would have all these people known about that conversation he had with the captain about speeding up the Titanic? Look, historically speaking, there have been debates and theories as to whether or not Ismay is Titanic's true villain, and whether or not he did insist on speeding her up in order to arrive early. Some have even questioned that the whole ordeal may be the captain's fault. But I still say, what about those wireless control officers? Look, maybe it's everyone's fault. Maybe it was just an amalgamation of bad choices and decisions on everyone's part, and not one single person is left to blame, but rather the whole event is just a tragedy of circumstances and misfortune. So it's here we get to the infamous alternative ending. Okay, so let's tread back a bit here. We all know the ending to the original movie, where Rose wakes up in the dead calm of night and walks across the deck of Lovett's ship and drops the heart of the ocean into the ocean, so she can finally make peace with the past and Titanic, where she returns to her room and peacefully passes away in her sleep as an old lady, as Jack had prophesied, where she's reunited with Jack and the other ghosts of the Titanic in heaven, where they can now be together for eternity. Now, this sequence is very calming and tender. However, the original ending was a lot more frantic, where the crew of Lovett's ship is throwing a party in celebration of finally leaving the ocean. And this lady's dancing is about as enthusiastic as me when I have to do my taxes. Lizzie gets a little flirty with Brock, trying to convince him to join the party. They then spot Rose attempting to drop the heart of the ocean. Rose is not having any of it and threatens to drop it if they come any closer.
Don't come any closer. I'll drop it.
Brock begs Rose not to drop it, but she's determined to.
Think about this for a second.
Oh, I've thought about this for years, and I've come all the way here to put it back where it belongs.
And so, seeing her determination, he asks if he can at least hold it in his hand, where Rose lets him and tells Brock that the real treasure is life and making each day count, once again as Jack had prophesied.
You look for treasure in the wrong place, Mr. Lovett. Only life is priceless, and making each day count.
Brock then accepts this antidote and lets Rose drop the heart of the ocean into the Atlantic Ocean.
That really sucks, lady!
Brock is now able to move forward in life rather than chasing old relics of the past. He then asks Lizzie to dance with him, suggesting a new courtship, I guess, and Rose looks on to the stars above. Now, I prefer the original ending, because Rose releasing the heart of the ocean into the Atlantic works better when it's something private and intimate for her. This is the end of her journey, so it makes sense that it should be a private grace between herself, rather than some party taking place and having people frantically yelling at her. In my opinion, the unused ending actually feels like the focus is more about Brock than it is Rose. However, this alternative ending did have one line that I really like, one that I think sums up the Titanic in general, where in regards to the heart of the ocean, Rose says that she's come all the way back to put it back where it belongs.
And I've come all the way here to put it back where it belongs.
What I believe Rose is saying here is she's sending the necklace back to Titanic, as it belongs with Titanic, because Titanic itself is the heart of the ocean, and will always be a part of the ocean, for here and ever after. I absolutely love The Legend of the Titanic, even more so than the movie. When it comes to the Titanic itself, I'm really fanatical. Look, I'll prove it. I even have the plates. Yep, Titanic plates. So I guess that's something. I honestly think it's a really sad story, one that's haunting and intriguing, and a monument to how we as humans always think that we have a grasp on things, but we really don't. Where the wreckage of the Titanic will always and forever be a ghostly monument of the past. And what's not to be fascinated by that? To finish up, I want to go back to that Q&A with Billy Zane, where one little boy asked him for advice on becoming an actor. And Zane was so kind and tender to this little boy, it was actually really cute. He was giving him helpful advice like, start now, be an actor now, don't stop reaching your goals. Billy Zane then says something about those times when things don't really work out along the way, and how it's okay when that happens. And what he said really got me so much, I actually wrote it down, where he said, quote, "Rejection is divine intervention. You don't get what you're not supposed to." And when you think about it, this sentence could sum up the Titanic itself. Mankind thought that it had created an unstoppable godlike ship, a monument to human achievement. But we just weren't supposed to have it. Yep, despite our hubris, destiny had other plans. The story of the Titanic isn't finished, it is still there. And so the RMS Titanic will forever live on in the hearts and dreams of all of us. See ya!